We are creatures of desire. What we most desire is meaning. What makes us suffer most is a lack of meaning.
The Meaningful Life with Andrew G. Marshall. Marital therapist, author, and communications trainer Andrew G. Marshall invites guests from all walks of life to discuss what makes life meaningful.
Hello, I'm Andrew G. Marshall. Welcome to The Meaningful Life. We're available on Apple, Spotify, Podbeam, and wherever you find your podcasts. How do you keep the spark alive in your relationship, especially after you have kids and there's 10, 15, 20 plus years on the clock? My guest today is couple therapist Carolyn Sharp. She earned a master's in social work from Portland State University and has 25 years experience helping people make better relationships. She's also the author of a new book called Fire It Up, 4 Secrets to Reigniting Intimacy and Joy. So, Carolyn, how did your upbringing prepare you to be a couples therapist?
Wow, that's a wonderful question. I think that, like many therapists in our field, I came from not ideal circumstances. So I learned from my family what I wanted to do differently. I had a very loving family, but there was addiction and mental health in my parents. So there wasn't a lot of healthy teaching and healthy space for me as a kid. And so I began my quest to help the world, make the world a better place, provide for children. And through that work, it taught me more and more about how relationships really are central to all of our learning, all of our growth, all of our healing and development as humans. And so over the course of my career, I have grown more and more fascinated by relationships, particularly romantic relationships, but really it applies to all humans relating to one another. And so I think my childhood sparked the interest in learning how to take better care of each other as human beings and how to relate to one another better.
And I think that your childhood gives us a very good example of how even quite small things can have an impact on how you see yourself and how you carry that through the rest of your life. So just to give people some background, you had 2 older siblings who were 7 and 5 years older than you. Mm-hmm. And obviously by the time you were up and around and walking and wanting to join them, you know, they're even older than that, and
right.
You're a bit of a nuisance.
Yes.
I mean, what message did that give you, and how did it impact on your relationships going forward from there?
Well, it set off in me sort of a frantic desire to get attention, to be liked, to be worthy of attention, to, pay attention to me, think I'm funny, think I'm cute, play with me, see me, all of that in a pretty frenetic, frantic way. That was furthered by, I also talk about my experience in New England boarding schools where I was wildly unpopular. I had very few friends, if any. And again, that perpetuated that frantic, like me, pay attention to me, which carried forward into all of my relationships where there's sort of a deep insecurity that I have to be aware of so that I'm not putting that responsibility on my partner or my friend to fill up that hole in me, and that it's just wiring in me that is wrong. There was nothing wrong with me at age, 3, 4, 10, 15, 20, 25. There was nothing wrong with me. I just had this seed of insecurity and desire to be seen and wanted and liked and interesting by those around me.
And that's the really difficult thing when you're a small child and something's not going well, because you're the center of the universe when you're a child. We haven't got the maturity to think, other people have their own stuff. Mm-hmm. So you think there's something wrong with me, not there's something wrong with the situation.
Right. And I didn't, because of what was happening for my parents, my mother's alcoholism and so on and so forth, they didn't have the time or the bandwidth to say, this isn't you, sweetie, this is the situation. Your sister and brother are off playing with their friends. That's normal. We have to find you other people to play with your own age so that you're not being a nuisance to them and so you don't feel so lonely and rejected all the time.
And how do you actually unlearn those lessons because, I've just laid it out for you. And I mean, you lay it out in your book as well, and we can sort of understand it. But how can people begin to unprogram these unhelpful kind of messages?
Well, the first thing I would say is to approach challenges that we're having, reactions that we're having to our relationships or to our life circumstances with two things. One is curiosity, the other is compassion toward ourselves. None of us choose, humans don't choose pain on purpose. It's not like we're rolling around and choosing to have the hard thing happen. It happens to us. And so we should soften and be kind to ourselves, which allows a little bit of relaxation to take place in the emotional system, and then be curious about it, genuinely curious, not from a what's wrong with you, you crazy person, but what's going on here? What's happening for you, so that you can, again, open yourself to what this might be. What is this, a pattern? How far back does this go? Where did you learn this? What would you like better than this or different from this? And that curiosity and compassion allows us to figure out what is really going on versus just shaming ourselves, which I find so prevalent now in social media that, in attachment science, you're either securely attached or you're insecurely attached. And if you're insecurely attached, you're sick and wrong. And it's really a shame, because with curiosity and compassion, we can just learn how that insecurity, quote unquote, what decisions it leads us to make and how we might want to be different. And so that curiosity and compassion is the first thing. And then as we unfold it, options will appear, and we can start to slow down our reactions and engage with them differently.
And I really want to underline what you're saying about the compassion, because I've just finished a session, and the amount of criticism that the client was giving to themselves, and I just did a tiny moment of compassion in the session, and it just blew her away, because so many people give themselves zero compassion.
Yeah. And we give our partners zero compassion. When they're being annoying, when they're being difficult, we just go immediately to criticism, and it just creates further and further distance and disconnect for us, versus leaning in and being curious about, why is my partner being such a pain in the rear end? Why is this happening? What's behind this behavior? Because as we all know, human behavior is driven by the attempt to meet a need. And if we can be curious about, what are we going for here? What is my partner trying to communicate or trying to have happen? It provides the answers to how can we do this differently.
So when we're growing up and we have a difficult childhood, or our parents have a difficult marriage, we tend to think, I'm going to do it differently. I'm going to find the right person. I'm going to find somebody I truly love. Now, one of the central messages of your book is that love is not enough. Now, I understand what you mean, but it's quite a revolutionary thought. So lay it out to me.
Okay.
And why is it so important for keeping the spark alive? Because you sort of logically think, if you've got plenty of love, there'll be spark, and hey ho, we'll be lighting fires till we're old and grey, or older and greyer in both of our cases.
Yes, and it is a revolutionary idea, and I get a lot of pushback on it, and I love talking about it, because if you bring to mind anybody that's listening that is in a 5, 10, 15-year relationship, if you bring to mind the course of your relationship, love is not a constant feeling that we feel. Particularly in those moments where our partner is being difficult, we're being difficult, or we're in that disconnected period of fight, some kind of conflict. We don't necessarily feel love. When our children are tiny and it's all diapers all the time, or no sleep, we're not really in connection to the love. And so we need to find something bigger than that, a purpose that defines, why are we together, and why are we needing to do the hard work to keep ourselves in connection? Just like, if for those that have the ability to go to the gym and want to work out, we don't want to go to the gym at all times. We have to have a reason to do that is bigger than that. Love is not constant, but a desire to have a healthy relationship could be. And particularly in those hard moments when our partner is being, let's say, a jerk, or we're being a jerk, that love isn't there. So the reason to look with curiosity and compassion at them, to instigate a hard conversation, to practice the skills needed in a long-term relationship, the motivation's not going to be there if you're looking for love only. You have to be looking for a motivation that's bigger than love.
So we're going to start talking about in a moment about how to deal with the spark, but you've said something in there that I've got to pull out, which is another one of your ideas, is every couple should work out what is the purpose of their relationship. Now, this is not something that I've ever in 40 years asked a couple to think about. So tell me why people need a purpose and give me some ideas of what that purpose might be beyond, raising two children, which is going to work for a certain amount of time, but children leave home. They don't stay forever.
And that has very little to do with our relationship. That has to do with our job as parents and our desire to create healthy, productive humans for society or for whatever reason, which is important in and of itself, but it isn't anything to do with our relationship, just us two. And so creating a purpose is really defining the why are we together? What is this relationship for? What are we doing this hard work of making a life together between two people?
But you see, my immediate reaction is to, I'm thinking about what's the purpose in my relationship, is I would just say because we love each other. Mm-hmm. And we're back to that problem of love is not enough.
Mm-hmm. So I always use my example because it's the one that I have at the ready always. But Jeff and my relationship purpose is to create a life of adventure and joy where we challenge each other to be our best selves. So that's the purpose of the relationship itself. We love each other and we invest love into the relationship. And love is also a byproduct of doing that purpose. But just loving each other isn't enough to get us to do the additional work of, if he does something stupid or I do something stupid, which happens on the regular, even as a professional relationship expert and therapist, we have to regroup and think about why did I do that? And to have the motivation to do that is about that purpose.
So give me some other examples from clients where you've helped them, because I'm still having trouble thinking of what mine might be.
To create a relationship where we make the world a better place, to contribute beauty to the world, to form a team where we travel the world and have adventure and joy, to create a family and a system where there is health and vitality for all of its members. Now I'm just spitballing and jamming on it. It's informed by what we want out of life, what we want to get out of the relationship, which is different for each person. Some people are really driven by their sexuality and their passion. Other people are driven by a desire for deep companionship. Others learning.
Maybe security.
Security, yes.
I'm beginning to get the idea. So the title of your book is Fire It Up, and I love the image. And you're saying that there's an analogy between building a good fire and building a good sex life. So talk me through that.
Well, and it goes beyond a sex life. It goes to the whole of a healthy relationship. And it's borrowed from a nerdy analogy to making campfires or any fire, which is that to build a fire, you need 3 primary ingredients, which is oxygen, ignition, and fuel. And then you also need a strong foundation to contain that fire. And a relationship needs the same thing. That foundation is that purpose that I was talking about. It's also the agreements we make, like we're monogamous or we're polyamorous, we're honest with each other, et cetera, et cetera. So it's those things that hold our relationship together as its own entity. Oxygen is that deep understanding of one another and acceptance for one another as people. It's separate from accepting every behavior my partner has. It's about accepting each other as who we are and who we want to be, and really knowing each other through that. And then also the right amount of time together, shared interests and separate interests that keeps the mystery alive between us, because as many people in the COVID lockdown experienced, too much time together, not good for sexy feelings. You really want to have some space to be healthy individuals. So that's oxygen. Fuel is healthy communication and that safety and security that's built in the commitment and in the willingness to do the work, to own your own stuff, repair when you make mistakes, to create the environment where it's safe to be a flawed, developing human being. So that's fuel. And then ignition is the spark, the fun, the passion, the romance that separates our relationship from every other relationship out there.
So let's look at some questions that could help us look at some of those elements. So the first one, is there enough oxygen to breathe in this relationship, or is it suffocating?
It's an important question, and one, again, this question stuns people because, there's all of this mythology of what a relationship is supposed to be. If we're in love with each other, we should want to be with each other 24/7. And if you want separate interests, that's not good. Even, if you sleep in separate bedrooms, that means your relationship is going to have catastrophic failure. There are all these myths around the right amount of time together, time apart, interests, shared interests, separate interests, and each couple gets to define for themselves what is healthy for them. And so it is about having a mindful, present conversation where you contemplate, how are we doing in this area? Do we have the right amount of shared interests so that we can connect around things, and separate interests so that we can come back together and bring newness to the relationship?
New people, new ideas.
New interests, new hobbies, new work activities, all of that stuff.
So how do you find common activities if you're actually quite different people and you're beginning to grow apart? Because, for example, your common interests were bringing up the children.
So that is so common. And, there's some finesse to this, because while common interests like taking a class together may be equally interesting to both. Let's take a cooking class and learn to make pasta, for example, may be equally interesting to both. But it doesn't necessarily need to be you're 50% interested, I'm 50% interested. It can be you're like fiery, passionate about making pasta, and I'm so about it. But the purpose of this is sharing in the experience, in having shared investment in, let's connect over an activity. It's okay if you like it so and I like it a lot, because there's an opportunity here for us to discuss this, learn from this, grow from this, from, understanding what did you like about it and not like about it. So there is this idea that shared interests have to be, we're both passionate about going to the ballet, or both passionate about golf. Not necessarily. If you love golf and I love you, then me going with you to play golf, I'm getting to be with you in your happiest place. And there's deep connection in that. So it's that curiosity again.
I have to say, if you go to the ballet, you see a lot of men who really love their wives. You can tell they'd rather not be there, but, because they love their wife, they don't hate it and they will go along. And so I think you're very right. It's really important. But that is not always you're doing something for your partner. It's got to work both ways. They've got to go to, I'm being stereotypical now, but they've got to go to the speedway racing as well, or the dogs, or whatever it is they like to go to.
Right. And it's about, where do you put your attention? Because if you're sitting at the ballet, I'm such a good husband, to use your gender example, by being here for my wife, you're focusing in the wrong area, versus really being present to how much your wife is enjoying it and how happy she is that you're there with her. If you put your attention there, and if I, reciprocate by putting myself the dog races or whatever, at seeing you happy and being with you while you're happy, then it's more interesting. It's more fun to go to that thing that isn't necessarily internally motivated by my interest in the ballet or whatever it is. So learning to put your attention where it counts.
So the next question, are you feeding fuel onto the fire, or are you starving it?
Yes. Are you sharing the information that your partner needs to know you? Are you encouraging honesty versus encouraging them to share the information you want to hear? Like, for example, if I cook dinner and I ask you if you like it, do I actually want honesty, or I just want you to tell me you like the food that I made? Am I actually putting in what feeds my partner and feeds our relationship? Healthy connection, healthy communication? Am I owning my stuff so that they feel safe to own their stuff? Am I apologizing when I make a mistake so that I'm encouraging them to do the same for me? Are we feeding it in the way it needs to be fed?
So if you're somebody who finds it difficult just to chat, which I don't think is you somehow.
Depends on the day and how many clients I've seen that day.
But there are lots of people. I mean, I have to tell you, the older I get, the harder I find it to do small talk, If you want to talk about the meaning of life, call me. If you want to talk about your holiday in Tenerife, I can fake it, but I find small talk really difficult. So for people who do find small talk difficult, and it is feeding the fire, this small talk, because it's keeping you in contact, and you can go from the small talk into something quite serious. How do you get better at small talk?
I don't know that I'm advocating small talk. I'm advocating real connection. And so
doesn't that come out of, an invitation like, how was your day? Which is a sort of I have to say, a small introduction. It's not saying, what do you think about the immigration policy of Donald Trump? Sort of kind of, huge topic. I consider that a bit of a small talk sort of kind of thing. And I can say, fine, I don't want to talk about what my clients were doing. How do I answer that question?
Well, I think, again, it comes down to how is the question asked, whether it is small talk, and I think we have just a semantic issue versus like, I'm really curious about how your day was. And you can ask just in that generic, the way that the coffee shop asks you, how's your day going or how are you, where they're not actually interested in an answer versus a real interest, real curiosity. I want to know what was meaningful. What was meaningful about your day today? What was the best part of your day? Tell me about something funny that happened to you today, something that connects us. It's about the intention behind the question for me and what I recommend for couples. And it's about the energy there. And not everybody is chatty. It doesn't all need to be in communication. In verbal communication and talking, it can also be eye contact. It can be physical contact. It can be doing an activity together without words. Every couple gets to define what connection is to them. And we, as you probably know, verbal communication only makes up, maybe 30% of communication. It's the nonverbal that is really speaking volumes. And so it's about, what are we going for here in this? And so faking it and small talk are not connecting for couples. It's about the presence and attention we bring to that conversation. And there are certainly days for me where I don't have it to give to my husband, and where I acknowledge that, I want to hear about your day, but I've been on the phone, I've been on videos, I've been in sessions all day. I really don't have any talking left in me. Can we, watch a movie together? And there's connection there because I'm being honest about what's true for me. I'm letting him know I'm interested, but I'm going to glaze over if you start talking at me.
And so we've done oxygen and fuel. We've done the solid foundation. We need a bit of ignition.
Yes. Well, and ignition is something that's really important for couples that have been together a long time. And it's important to recognize that there are these myths that area of our life should just take care of itself. If you really love each other, that part's easy. And there's a resistance to the idea that you have to work at it, just like every other area in your life. And in American culture, at least, there's, our puritanical beginnings really threw a wrench into the capacity to be open, to be honest, to be transparent about our interests, and to be able to talk about that well. And so creating room for honesty, for connection, for the changes that take place in the course of a many-year relationship, to acknowledge, I don't like things the same way I used to, as well as the complexity of that area of our life, that it's not just about the sex, it's about being able to play together, that curiosity thing, being able to have fun and laugh together, and being able, most of all, to feed the passions that we each have, both inside and outside of the relationship. So our passions for one another, but our passion for the ballet or our passion for the races or whatever it is, that we need to be learning how to feed all areas of ourselves and our passion for all areas of our life in order to bring the juicy, sexy passion into our relationship.
I think that's interesting, this whole idea of feeding yourself, because as a writer, I sometimes do what's called writer dates, where you do things to actually feed your writing. Because if you're not putting anything in, it's rather difficult to have anything to come out. So that might be going to an art gallery, might be reading a book or whatever. And I'm thinking we probably need to be feeding our marriage in that similar kind of way.
Yep. We need to be going to things that we never would have done. A totally new restaurant, a totally new neighborhood to walk around, to go to the horse races or the car races or whatever, even though neither of us really have super interest in that. That's going to generate some interesting reactions in us. If it's something that I don't like, but you like, now we have something spark-filled to talk about. And if we've created the safe environment for both of us to be honest about, I hated that. I hated that movie. I hated that play. Well, tell me about what you hated about it. I really liked it. Well, tell me about what you liked about it. Now we got engines firing again because we've created room and we've fed a dialogue between us that's about something totally new. And we're learning something about each other that, wow, you have a strong reaction to that playwright or to that hobby. That's fascinating.
And that's sort of safe enough. I can do that. But when it comes to, I'm bored with our sex life, I think it takes a very brave person. And I've met very few brave people, brave enough people. So how are you going to give us a bit of some tips? I think that's what I'm looking for igniting the passion.
Well, the first thing I try to do is normalize that everybody gets bored. Everybody gets bored in their sex life over the course of a many-decade relationship. Everybody. I have not met in my, almost 3-decade career, I have never met a couple that didn't, when they were honest, acknowledge, I don't really like that anymore. And so I try to normalize that to create space and safety to acknowledge, it's kind of getting a little humdrum in that area, so that now, all right, now we have honesty. Now we have safety to acknowledge. And then I try to feed the curiosity about what your partner likes and doesn't like. And so I will ask a couple, does your partner like X or Y in the bedroom? I don't know how graphic to get on your podcast, but
you can be as graphic as you like. We're all consenting adults. So
awesome. Does your partner masturbate? And I get blank stares. They have no idea if their partner masturbates. How do you not know your partner's sexual habits and their sexual interests? What's their favorite sexual memory with you? And I always, I'm a trained Stan Tatkin's PACT approach to therapy. So my technique is I ask the partner about their partner rather than asking you what you like and having your partner listen. I'll ask your partner what you like and have them talk about it. A crosstalk sort of process, which illuminates things in that nonverbal sense. But couples don't know. And so again, creating curiosity to understand better what your partner's favorite thing that you do for them is sexually. What is their favorite sexual memory with you? They don't know because they don't talk about it. And so that is the first piece, is normalizing and making it totally not a big deal that it's boring, because of course it gets boring. If you ate the same thing every day for 30 years, you would get bored of that thing. Why is it not safe to acknowledge that if we do the same 3 things, the same 4 things, the same 10 things over 30 years, it gets boring?
Yeah, and you do what worked 30 years ago.
Yes.
And, do we still go to the same restaurants? Do we still go to the same holiday destinations? Do we still wear the same clothes 30 years later?
Well, and our bodies change. Our sensations change. Our taste buds change. So, using my son is coming to mind. He used to love spicy food. He can't eat it anymore. So everything changes, and yet we expect things to be the same, and we make it a bad thing that they're not the same. And that's what I'm trying to break that house down, set it on fire in a different way, to just assume your partner's bored and be curious about what would make them not bored.
So what other questions can't people answer beyond, does your partner masturbate?
What their favorite thing is, what they like, what they don't like, everything from favorite position to what you do with your hands, do they like oral sex? Do they not like oral sex? All of that stuff, couples don't know the answer to it. I mean, I don't want to generalize to everybody, because there are couples that are good at talking about sex. Those couples have less problems in this area.
They're probably not coming to see you or I.
Right. Not around that issue.
So I think let's look at a case, because I invite people to write in with particular problems, and we've got one coming up in just a moment.
The Meaningful Life with Andrew G. Marshall. Please follow us on Twitter, like us on Facebook, and visit our website, andrewgmarshall.com/podcast, where you can join our supporters club and unlock bonus material and other benefits.
I'm pleased to invite you to check out my new, expanded and updated website. I have lots of new articles to help you. My partner has no time for sex. How to argue constructively. Are you in a zombie marriage? There's all sorts of other useful things you can do on the website. You can book an appointment with my team of experienced counselors. You can ask a question on the podcast, and you can find out details of my video course, My Best Relationship Tools. Want to know more? Go to www.andrewgmarshall.com. See you there. Exciting news! I am running a 4-day men's retreat this September in the woods just outside Berlin, and I'd like to invite you or your husband to attend. What will you get out of it? By opening up and trusting other men, you'll also be deepening your relationship with yourself and all your other significant relationships. In a circle of like-minded men, we can focus on what it means to be a man today and how to support our sons to become balanced men too. Topics will include what I call the father wound, inherited issues from your father and the ancestral fathers, the key male Jungian archetypes, king, magician, warrior and lover, and why men find women's anger difficult to navigate. If you're looking for new directions or a reset, the retreat will culminate in a vision quest to tap into your inner wisdom to unlock a new way forward. You can find out more about the beautiful location, the seminar house itself, and the costs on my website. The website is andrewgmarshall.com. Click on the button marked Men's Retreat. Do it now, because up till Easter there's a 20% discount. Looking forward to meeting you and working with you.
Podbean, your message amplified.
Ready to share your message with the world? Start your podcast journey with Podbean.
Podbean, the AI-powered all-in-one podcast platform.
Thousands of businesses and enterprises trust Podbean to launch their podcasts.
Use Podbean to record your podcast.
Use Podbean AI to optimize your podcast.
Use Podbean AI to turn your blog into a podcast.
Use Podbean to distribute your podcast everywhere.
Launch your podcast on Podbean today.
If you'd like to participate in the program, you can go to my new all-sparkling, all-dancing website, andrewgmarshall.com, and you'll find a section about my podcasts. You can see some of my favorite episodes, have a look at those, and there's a section there where you can give feedback and you can ask a question that I will post to one of my experts. And this is one I've had today. My husband has had an affair, but it seems he's angry with me, especially about our sex life, which he describes as unsatisfactory. I feel humiliated that he went with this other woman who still sends him emails. He says there's nothing to worry about because he wants to be with me. I would like to believe him, but it's hard. His biggest complaint is that I don't initiate sex and make him feel wanted. I tell him I want to be wanted too, and what has he done to my self-confidence? He claims he does want me, but I ask, so why did you go with your ... I will spare you the word. I think we can guess, thank you. We just go round in circles. I feel under so much pressure, which doesn't help. What should I do? We have 2 children.
Well, if you took out the affair part and you just shared everything else that they were talking about with their sex life, we would do everything we're just talking about, instill more curiosity and safety and communication and all of that to feed the spark and to feed all of the areas of their relationship. When you introduce an affair, you're introducing a trauma into the relationship. And so that has to be healed first because it's impacts the safety needed to have that healthy sex life for the 2 of them. So, I know your 3-step process. I love it for healing and after infidelity. I also follow Esther Perel's 3-step process in her book, The State of Affairs, where, really the traumatized individual needs care and attention in order to lower down the post-traumatic stress response that they're likely having from the betrayal. And in this case, from what she's saying, and of course, we're only hearing her perspective on this, she sounds a little bit like she's being gaslit and blamed for the affair. And while, undoubtedly they had problems in their relationship for there to be room for an affair, he made the choice to have the affair, and he needs to take responsibility for the choice. And so what I would say to her is, first, this is an issue that is bigger than a podcast response. She deserves more support than that. But that all of her feelings are valid, and she needs healing in order to honor how this has impacted her. And in my experience, that needs to heal first before she can have room and curiosity for his experience of why he chose the affair, which matters too. But she's not going to have an opening while she's feeling under pressure, PTSD, betrayed, hurt, embarrassed, ashamed, all of that stuff. She's not going to have room for it.
And both of them are asking the other person to turn me on. Now, is that a fair thing to ask our partner to do?
Yes, in normal circumstances, to figure out what between us is spark inducing. What do I do that makes you feel excited sexually? We should both be mutually doing that. We should be creating a system where that naturally happens and where we work at that mutually. In these circumstances, post-affair, in a period of time, and as you probably know, the statistics are it takes, approximately on average 2 years to recover from an affair. So in the early days post-affair, is that reasonable? I would say no. I would say no, that they're not going to be turning each other on because there's lots of injury there. And when we're feeling under fight or flight, we're not going to be having access to those parts of ourselves that get turned on.
But let's put aside the affair for a moment. Mm-hmm. Don't we have responsibility for turning ourselves on as well?
Absolutely, we do. Yeah, it's always both and. It's not do everything for me and I'll just be a passive observer. A good sex life is a mutual sex life where we are both engaging with what turns our partner on and what turns ourselves on, and communicating, that feels good, that doesn't feel good, I want more of that, more to the left, more to the right, all of that stuff. We have a responsibility to figure out what turns us on and communicate it to our partner.
And the things that we're going to talk about now, which are general good housekeeping for relationships, I've pulled out 4 of your ideas to talk about, are in fact actually particularly important after an affair. You really do need to go back to the basics and get all of those sorted out, as well as dealing with the trauma of the affair. And so, as I say, I've pulled out 4 things. The first one is making greetings special.
Yes. Greeting each other upon distance is a way of reconnecting. It's our attachment systems are wired for this, and it is important to let your partner know, I'm happy to see you, because it gives us a dopamine boost. And, it's like, oh, I'm coming into an environment where I'm wanted, I'm appreciated, I'm liked, I'm interesting, all of those sorts of things. And so creating that habit in the relationship of greeting each other with love, enthusiasm, whatever, and each couple is different in terms of what their traditions and routines need to be. But it really does feed positivity, love, connection, spark into the relationship.
Celebrate reunions.
Yep. So that's coming back to each other when you've been apart, whether it's all day, whether it's in the morning after sleep, or whether it's after a long trip. It is that I'm happy you're back. I'm happy to be reconnecting with you. And depending on what your attachment style is, you will have different challenges that will make it difficult, because some people have difficulty going from time alone into time together, or some people, need it and are very hungry for that reconnection. And so knowing yourself and knowing your partner really sets up how to build that in a way that's sustainable and feeding for your relationship.
Expressing gratitude. And I think this one is really important and really overlooked. So tell me more.
There's lots and lots and lots of science about the power of gratitude to shift our thinking from negative to positive, to overcome the negativity bias in our brain. And so particularly when there is injury, it is important for us to recognize the things and say out loud the things that our relationship and that our partner does for us, and to express it verbally, whether in writing, however it is, to express I love you. I'm grateful for you. And particularly in hard times, the strongest couples I work with have the capacity to hold the positive and the negative simultaneously. I'm frustrated with you and I love you. I'm really hurt by you and I still choose you every day. I'm still glad you're my partner, even though right now I'm really hurt by what you did. The capacity to hold both of those states really creates strength in the connection.
Let's say that again. You need to be able to hold the positives and the negatives at the same time and articulate them preferably in the same sentence. So give us another example of that.
The ability to, and this is a skill I have couples practice a lot, the ability in the middle of a conflict to say, you're driving me freaking crazy and I love you so much. I'm so mad at you and you're still my favorite person. I want to kill you and I just love you so much. The ability to hold both of these states and recognize them and pull them, even bring them alive in yourself, because any person may be so used to just holding one that they don't have the practice to recognize I actually do feel both things. It's a really, really healthy practice.
Yeah, I think that one could be a really good one for people to learn. And this one I think is getting harder and harder, and that is to be present.
Yes, there is so much pulling our attention away. We're being inundated constantly with, these devices that carry the news of what's happening moment to moment in the world, and much of it is scary and hard. So it is really difficult to be present to each other. And so carving out time to put the phones away, close the laptops, and just be in eye contact with each other, just check in on each other, ask a question with curiosity and compassion. Even doing that for 30 seconds reminds us why we're here in this relationship. It's, oh, there you are. I see you. I love you. We're together. We're in this together. It is so powerful for us. And so it's one of the things that I have couples do at the start of every session, at the start of every exercise that they practice, sit in eye contact and just breathe together for 3 breaths. That's it.
A curious question to help us be present to ourselves.
How am I feeling right now? What do I notice in my body in this moment? How's my breathing? Anything about our physical state helps bring us into that physical state and helps tune some of the noise outside of us out.
So we've been talking about how to keep the spark alive in your relationship. And I'm aware that you work a lot with the subject of polyamory, which, if people don't know what we're talking about, this is being in love with more than one person at the same time. Now, I've heard people say that that is a way of sparking up your relationship. Is that what you've discovered or found?
Well, done with care and intention and a lot of work, it can, but it's not the antidote to things going quiet. I most often have seen couples who are wanting to throw themselves into polyamory because things have gone a little dull, and it universally backfires. Because what has caused it to go dull is not the absence of other people. It's the fact that we're not really present with one another. So you add another person in, you now have created more distance from doing the work necessary for us to have a healthy relationship. Now I can just take all of my sexy feelings to this other person. And now I have even less motivation to work on our connection. So it's a dangerous thing to bring into a relationship without a lot of care and intention. It can really deepen a relationship if both people in the primary relationship do the work to understand, why are we interested in this? What are we looking for? What can we expect? What are our ground rules? All that sort of stuff. It can deepen things, certainly, richly, but you have to do a lot of work to make it go well.
So give us an example of the sort of work that you do with couples.
Well, I spoke to it a second ago of understanding what is our goal here? Why do we want to be polyamorous? What are we looking for out of this experience? And then digging underneath that question to, is this to try and solve a problem that exists in our current relationship? And that's the red flag that everyone should notice and attend to before attempting polyamory. So if it's, why do we want this? Well, I don't feel attracted to you anymore. We've got to look at that deeply to understand, is that something that we're trying to avoid actually doing work around? Or is that really something that polyamory is going to address? So we look at why we want to do it, what we're hoping to get out of it. Then we create the ground rules of how to keep it safe for a relationship, what is in bounds and what is out of bounds, from, the other relationships can come to the house. We talk to each other about our dates, or we don't talk to each other about our other dates or our other relationship. There are a million examples, and every couple has to define it for themselves. Within polyamory, there's different structures for doing that. And you really want to have a healthy understanding of what's going to work for you and the communication necessary to make sure it stays safe, emotionally safe for both parties, physically safe as well, because of course, if you're having sexual activity with other people, you want to make sure that you're doing so in a safe way for everybody involved.
So we're running towards the end of the time we've got here today, but we're going to be talking some more in the bonus material. I'm going to be talking about a subject that I was absolutely fascinated. You had 5 principles for a healthy relationship. And the last one is you need to totally accept your partner, which feels like quite a tough one. So we're going to talk about those 5 principles and in particular how to accept your partner in a moment. But before that, before we finish the main podcast, I have to ask you as a witness on The Meaningful Life, what makes your life meaningful?
My relationships make my life meaningful. I'm happiest and I am most myself in connection to others, whether that's someone I love deeply, like my child or my partner or my friend or whatever, or it's a client where I'm seeing and I'm participating in their growth, or it's this total stranger on the sitting across from a stranger on the subway and we're laughing about a shared experience on the subway. That human-to-human connection feels like a portal to all kinds of good growth and learning about myself, other people, and the universe as a whole.
So if you want to find out more about how to totally accept your partner and the other 4 principles, that's one of them, you can hear the bonus material by subscribing directly via Apple or Spotify. Or if you want to become a supporter of The Meaningful Life and unlock the bonus material this way, here are the details.
You've been listening to The Meaningful Life with Andrew G. Marshall. You can follow Andrew on Twitter, like him on Facebook, and please leave a review wherever you consume your podcasts. Making, editing, and distributing The Meaningful Life comes with substantial costs, and we'd like to ask for your help. Visit our website, andrewgmarshall.com/podcast, where you can join our supporters club and unlock bonus material for every program, send in a letter to be discussed by Andrew and his guests, and join a community of other people seeking to make their life meaningful. At the gold level, you get even more benefits. Production of The Meaningful Life with Andrew G. Marshall is by Michael Dooney. Social media by Madeleine Healy. Sound engineering and theme tune by Sebastian de la Luz Mendoza. And I'm Susie Colick. Please tell your friends and spread the word. Thank you.
Doctor, my husband's unresponsive.
Well, something usually triggers him to wake up, so...
Well, I was going to go to S&G Carpet today.
Okay.
But he blinked.
Keep going, then.
During S&G Carpet's March into Spring sale, select flooring is up to 25% off.
Well, blink.
Oh, my gosh.
Blink if you want me to put the basketball tournament on.
Seriously? Honey, blink if you want to save 25% during S&G's March into Spring sale. He's all there.
S&G, more than carpet.
Go to sgcarpet.com for the nearest showroom or to shop at home. Now offering carpet and hard surface cleaning.